Snow fell softly outside. The old farmhouse was cozy and warm. Inside, the Harrison family was gathered around the fireplace. Laughter filled the air as they sipped hot cocoa and shared stories. Christmas Eve had always been a special time for the Harrisons. They cherished their traditions. This year was no different. John, the father, stoked the fire. Warmth radiated through the room. His wife Mary hummed a cheerful Christmas tune. Their two children, Emily and Ethan, played a board game on the floor. The scent of pine needles and cinnamon wafted from the elaborately decorated Christmas tree. The twinkling lights cast a magical glow on the family. Everything felt perfect. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows. The children paused their game, their eyes darting towards the sound. John chuckled, reassuring them. "Just the wind," he said. He took a sip of his cocoa, a contented smile on his face. "It's a perfect night for a Christmas story." Little did they know their perfect night was about to take a chilling turn. As John began a classic Christmas tale, a sound drifted from outside. It was faint at first, carried on the wind, singing. It grew louder and the family fell silent. Their happy chatter faded. This was no ordinary Christmas carol. The melody was haunting, the voices hollow and chilling. The children exchanged nervous glances. Emily moved closer to her mother, clutching her arm. Ethan's eyes were wide with a mixture of curiosity and fear. The fire crackled, momentarily distracting them from the eerie singing. But the voices outside grew stronger, demanding attention. John put down his mug, his brow furrowed. He rose from his chair and walked towards the window. Peering through the frosted glass, he could see shadowy figures approaching. They moved slowly, their forms obscured by the swirling snow. The haunting melody continued, sending shivers down his spine. The figures stopped in front of the house. Their song ceased abruptly. John watched, a knot of unease forming in his stomach. One of the figures, taller than the rest, stepped forward. It held out a long, bony finger and beckoned John closer. Reluctantly, John approached the door. The children watched from the safety of their mother's arms, their eyes wide with fear. He hesitated for a moment, then unlatched the door and stepped out into the cold night. The singers stood motionless, their faces shrouded in shadow. The air grew heavy, charged with an unnatural stillness. The tall figure stepped closer. It held out a rolled-up parchment, tied with a faded red ribbon. "A message," the figure rasped, its voice like dry leaves crunching underfoot. John took the scroll, his hand trembling. The figure stepped back, and the haunting melody began again. The figures turned and melted away into the night, their song fading into the swirling snow. John hurried back inside, locking the door behind him. He could still hear the faint echo of the eerie carol in the wind. The family gathered around him, their faces etched with worry. He untied the ribbon and unfurled the scroll. The parchment was ancient, brittle with age. Strange symbols and faded writing covered its surface. "What does it say?" Mary asked, her voice barely a whisper. John shook his head. "I don't know," he admitted. "I can't make it out." As he stared at the strange symbols, a cold draft swept through the room. The fire in the fireplace flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. A low, guttural whisper seemed to emanate from the scroll itself. The hairs on the back of John's neck stood on end. The children huddled closer to their parents, their eyes wide with terror. The temperature in the room plummeted. The joyful decorations and warm glow of the Christmas lights seemed to dim. The once comforting and familiar farmhouse felt cold, invaded by an unseen force. John quickly rolled up the scroll, desperate to banish the feeling of dread that had descended upon them. He tossed it on the table, determined to salvage their Christmas Eve. "It's just a prank," he said, forcing a smile. "Let's not let it spoil our evening." He led his family to the dining room, where a feast awaited them. The table was laden with Christmas delicacies: roast turkey, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, and a mountain of presents. For a while, the warmth of the food and the joy of exchanging gifts pushed the strange encounter to the back of their minds. Laughter returned, albeit strained. But the festive cheer was short-lived. A blood-curdling scream pierced the air. Emily dropped her fork, her face pale with terror. She pointed a trembling finger at the window. "Look!" she cried. Pressed against the glass, their faces contorted in grotesque expressions, were the carolers. Their eyes glowed an eerie red in the darkness.